The DNA test results trembled in my hands as I stared at the words that would change everything. 99. 7% probability of aunt-niece relationship. For 3 years, my adopted daughter Maya had screamed that I would never be her real mother. She was right about one thing. I wasn't her mother. I was her aunt. And the sister who had died in that car crash when Maya was 5 had been keeping the biggest secret of our family's life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The words hit me like a physical blow on what should have been one of the happiest mornings of my life. Maya stood in the doorway of our kitchen, her 17-year-old frame rigid with the kind of anger that had become our daily reality, clutching her acceptance letter to Northwestern University. Instead of celebration, she delivered the sentence that would haunt me for months. "Don't think this changes anything, Catherine. You can pay for my college, you can sign the papers, you can pretend all you want, but you will never, ever be my real mother." The acceptance letter fluttered to the floor as she stormed out, leaving me alone with my coffee and the weight of 3 years' worth of similar declarations. Maya had perfected the art of using my name instead of any maternal title, a calculated reminder that I was, in her words, just the woman who took me in when nobody else wanted the responsibility. Each word was chosen for maximum impact, designed to reinforce the emotional distance she had constructed between us since the day she arrived at my doorstep. I had become Maya's guardian through circumstances that still felt surreal, even after all this time. My sister Lauren had died in a car accident when Maya was 5 years old, leaving behind a confused and traumatized little girl who had already experienced more loss than most adults could comprehend. Lauren had been a single mother, and our parents had passed away years earlier, leaving me as the only remaining family member capable of providing stability for Maya's future. The decision to adopt Maya had felt obvious and necessary rather than heroic or generous. She was my sister's daughter, my niece, family in the most fundamental sense. I had assumed that blood connections and time would naturally evolve into the kind of loving relationship that families create through shared experiences and mutual care. I could not have been more wrong about how complicated the process would become. Maya's resistance to our relationship had been immediate and unwavering. From the moment she moved into my Chicago apartment, she made it clear that she viewed me as a temporary caretaker rather than a permanent family member. She would ask when she was going back to her real home with her real mother, unable to understand that death was permanent and that our current arrangement was not transitional but foundational for her future. The early years had been challenging but manageable. Maya's grief counselor had warned me that children who experience traumatic loss often resist forming new attachments as a protective mechanism. I had expected anger, sadness, and difficulty adjusting to new routines and expectations. What I had not anticipated was Maya's systematic campaign to ensure that I never forgot my status as an inadequate substitute for the mother she had lost. As Maya grew older, her resistance became more sophisticated and emotionally devastating. She developed an uncanny ability to identify my insecurities and exploit them with surgical precision. When I struggled with work-life balance while building my marketing consulting practice, she would comment that her real mother had always been available when she needed her. When I made mistakes in parenting decisions, she would observe that someone who had never wanted children obviously did not understand how to raise them properly. The comment about never wanting children was particularly painful because it contained enough truth to be effective. I had been 32 when Maya came to live with me, focused entirely on building my career and maintaining my independence. I had not ruled out parenthood completely, but I had assumed it would happen later, with more planning and preparation. Maya's arrival had required me to reorganize my entire life around responsibilities I had never chosen, and challenges I felt unprepared to handle. Maya seemed to understand instinctively that my confidence as a parent was fragile and constantly questioned. She would point out that I had learned everything about child rearing from books and internet research, rather than from natural maternal instincts. She would contrast my awkward attempts at discipline with memories of her mother's effortless authority. Most cutting of all, she would suggest that I was raising her out of obligation rather than love, fulfilling a duty rather than embracing a relationship. These attacks became more frequent and vicious as Maya entered adolescence and began testing boundaries with the determination of someone who had lost control over too many aspects of her life. She seemed to believe that if she could make our relationship sufficiently unpleasant, I might surrender my guardianship and allow her to live with friends or distant relatives who would make fewer demands on her emotional availability. The irony was that Maya's behavior often reflected exactly the kind of mother-daughter conflict that occurs in biological families, but she interpreted our disputes as evidence that we were fundamentally incompatible, rather than naturally working through the challenges of adolescent development. When she slammed doors or refused to communicate about her day, I saw normal teenage behavior that required patience and consistency. She saw proof that we were strangers forced together by circumstances beyond our control. The college preparation process had intensified these dynamics rather than resolving them. Maya's academic excellence and extracurricular achievements had created opportunities for her to attend prestigious universities far from Chicago. Instead of feeling pride in her accomplishments or gratitude for the support I had provided, she seemed to view college acceptance as her escape from a living situation she had never wanted, and a relationship she had never chosen to pursue. The Northwestern acceptance represented the culmination of years of careful planning and significant financial investment on my part. I had hired tutors, paid for test preparation courses, and contributed to numerous application fees and campus visits. More importantly, I had provided the emotional support and encouragement that enabled Maya to excel academically, despite the challenges she faced in processing her early trauma. Maya's response to her acceptance had been complicated from the beginning. She was genuinely excited about the academic opportunities and social experiences that college would provide, but she was also determined to ensure that I understood my role in her success was purely instrumental rather than meaningful. She would thank me for handling the logistics, while making it clear that her achievements reflected her own capabilities, rather than any nurturing or guidance I had provided. The morning of her cruel declaration had begun with my attempts to plan a celebration dinner for her acceptance. I had suggested inviting her closest friends and perhaps my colleague Sarah, who had become something like family to both of us over the years. Maya had responded with barely concealed irritation that I was making this about myself, rather than recognizing that her college acceptance was her achievement that had nothing to do with me. When I persisted in trying to discuss celebration plans, Maya had escalated to the devastating personal attack that left me questioning everything about our relationship and my role in her life. The declaration that I would never be her real mother was not new, but the context made it particularly painful. She was using her moment of greatest triumph to remind me of my greatest failure, ensuring that her success would be forever associated with my inadequacy. The aftermath of her words left me sitting alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of the life we had built together over 3 years. Maya's artwork from middle school still decorated the refrigerator. Her academic awards lined the shelves in our living room. Photographs from family vacations and school events covered the walls, documenting shared experiences that I had treasured, but that she apparently viewed as meaningless obligations. I found myself questioning every assumption I had made about our relationship and my effectiveness as a parent. Had I been deluding myself about the progress we had made in building trust and affection? Was Maya simply tolerating my presence while counting the days until she could escape to college and never look back? Had I fundamentally misunderstood what she needed from me and what I was capable of providing? The doubts were particularly painful because they echoed criticisms that extended beyond my relationship with Maya to my broader sense of identity and capability. I had always prided myself on being competent and successful in my professional life, but parenting had revealed limitations and vulnerabilities that I struggled to accept. Maya's attacks targeted precisely the areas where I felt most uncertain about my abilities and most sensitive about my choices. As I sat in the silence that followed Maya's departure for school, I realized that her college acceptance, which should have represented a shared triumph, had instead become another reminder of the emotional distance between us. She was preparing to leave for university with apparent relief at escaping our relationship rather than sadness about ending a chapter of family life we had created together. The pain of this realization was compounded by my awareness that time was running out to repair whatever had gone wrong between us. Maya would be leaving for college in just a few months, and her clear intention was to minimize contact once she gained independence. I faced the prospect of having invested 3 years of my life in raising a young woman who would disappear from my life as soon as circumstances permitted. The morning that had begun with such promise and potential for celebration had become another confirmation that my attempts to create a loving family relationship had failed, despite years of effort and genuine commitment. Maya's words echoed in my mind as I prepared for another day of pretending that everything was fine while feeling increasingly hopeless about the possibility of ever bridging the gap between us. What I could not have imagined was that this moment of deepest discouragement would soon be followed by a discovery that would transform everything I thought I knew about Maya, our family, and the secrets that had shaped both our lives in ways I was only beginning to understand. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. This opening section establishes Catherine as a competent professional who became a guardian through family obligation rather than choice, setting up her vulnerability to Maya's attacks on her maternal capabilities. Maya is portrayed as intelligent and academically successful but emotionally damaged, using sophisticated psychological tactics to maintain distance from Catherine. The relationship dynamic shows genuine care from Catherine struggling against Maya's systematic resistance, creating a foundation for the dramatic reversal that will come with the DNA revelation. Both characters are fighting battles they do not fully understand, which will make the eventual truth both shocking and explanatory of their persistent conflicts. The setting in Chicago provides an urban backdrop that allows for privacy and anonymity, while also offering the resources and opportunities that will become important as the story develops. The college acceptance creates both immediate conflict and future stakes, establishing the timeline pressure that will drive subsequent events. Maya's declaration that I would never be her real mother created a psychological avalanche that transformed every aspect of my daily existence during the weeks that followed. What began as immediate hurt from her cruel words gradually evolved into a comprehensive questioning of my fundamental capabilities, professional competence, and personal worth that extended far beyond my role as Maya's guardian. The doubt established residence in my mind with the persistence of an unwelcome houseguest who refused to acknowledge visiting hours or boundaries. The erosion of confidence began with seemingly minor disruptions to routine decision-making processes that had previously operated automatically. Tasks that had once felt natural and intuitive suddenly required extensive internal deliberation and second-guessing that paralyzed effective action. When Maya requested permission for social activities, I found myself analyzing every aspect of my response for evidence of overprotectiveness, permissiveness, or poor judgment, rather than simply applying reasonable parenting standards. When she complained about household rules or expectations, I questioned whether my requirements were appropriate boundary setting or evidence of my inadequacy as a nurturing figure. The doubt infiltrated my professional consulting practice with equal destructive efficiency. Client presentations that had once energized me became sources of anxiety, as I questioned whether my confidence in business strategy recommendations was authentic expertise, or simply performance designed to mask fundamental incompetence. If I could not successfully navigate a relationship with a teenager who had lived in my home for 3 years, what qualified me to advise business leaders about communication strategies, organizational development, or market positioning? The skills that had seemed transferable between personal and professional contexts now appeared compartmentalized and artificial. Sleep became increasingly elusive as my mind engaged in relentless analysis of every significant interaction Maya and I had shared since her arrival. Conversations that I had treasured as evidence of growing trust and connection were systematically re-examined and reframed through the lens of Maya's apparent deception or manipulation. The evening she had enthusiastically helped me prepare dinner for my 35th birthday, laughing at my attempts to follow a complicated Italian recipe while sharing stories about her day at school, now seemed like calculated performance designed to maintain my financial support rather than genuine enjoyment of our time together. The vacation we had taken to Door County the previous summer, which I had interpreted as a breakthrough in our relationship development, became evidence of my naivete rather than progress toward authentic family bonding. Maya had appeared relaxed and genuinely happy during those 5 days, participating in activities without complaint, initiating conversations about her hopes for senior year, and even expressing gratitude for the opportunity to explore Wisconsin's coastal towns. I had interpreted her behavior as confirmation that patience and consistency were finally yielding the family connection I had hoped to build since becoming her guardian. Through the filter of post-rejection analysis, Maya's vacation behavior appeared orchestrated rather than spontaneous. Her willingness to participate in hiking, museum visits, and local festivals now seemed like strategic cooperation designed to ensure future vacation opportunities, rather than evidence of growing comfort with family activities. Her expressions of gratitude for the trip, which had filled me with hope about our relationship trajectory, were reframed as manipulation tactics employed by someone sophisticated enough to understand the importance of maintaining positive interactions with the person controlling her living situation and educational opportunities. Even Maya's remarkable academic achievements became twisted into evidence of my irrelevance to her development and success. Her consistent academic excellence, leadership positions in student government, and acceptance to Northwestern University were clearly the results of her intelligence, determination, and natural capabilities rather than any meaningful contribution from my guidance or support. The tutoring sessions I had arranged for challenging courses, the late-night assistance with college application essays, and the countless conversations about academic goals were reframed as logistical management, rather than substantive mentoring, that had influenced her intellectual or personal growth. The financial investments I had made in Maya's education and development, which had once felt like natural expressions of family commitment, began to appear desperate and potentially counterproductive. The private school tuition, summer enrichment programs, standardized test preparation courses, and extracurricular activity fees represented substantial monetary outlays that Maya had never acknowledged or appreciated. Her treatment of these opportunities as entitlements rather than privileges suggested that my generosity might have actually undermined our relationship by eliminating any incentive for gratitude or recognition of my contributions to her success. The comparison trap became an inescapable feature of my daily mental landscape during this period. I found myself researching other families formed through adoption and guardianship arrangements, seeking evidence that would either validate my approach or confirm my suspected inadequacies. Online forums for adoptive parents provided both comfort and additional anxiety, as I discovered that many families faced similar challenges while others seemed to achieve the loving relationships that continued to elude Maya and me, despite years of effort and genuine commitment. Success stories often featured children who had overcome initial resistance to form deep emotional bonds with their adoptive families through patient consistency and unconditional love. These narratives provided hope that Maya's behavior might eventually change, but they also raised troubling questions about why our relationship had not followed similar positive trajectories. The families that thrived seemed to possess characteristics that I increasingly doubted I could develop: intuitive understanding of child psychology, natural warmth and emotional availability, or simply better timing in terms of when adoption occurred, and what traumas the children had previously experienced. More disturbing were detailed accounts of adoptions that had ultimately failed, despite years of professional counseling, therapeutic interventions, and genuine love from all parties involved. These stories documented situations where fundamental incompatibilities between adoptive parents and children had persisted, regardless of effort, resources, or expert guidance. Reading these accounts forced me to confront the possibility that some relationships could not be repaired through intention and commitment alone, and that Maya and I might be facing insurmountable differences in temperament, emotional needs, or attachment styles. My relationship with Sarah, who had been my closest friend and most reliable source of emotional support throughout the adoption process, became strained as I found myself unable to discuss Maya's latest cruelty without questioning Sarah's judgment and advice. Sarah had been consistently encouraging throughout my guardianship of Maya, helping me navigate legal requirements during the adoption process and offering practical assistance during Maya's initial adjustment period. She had also served as an informal mentor figure for Maya, providing another adult perspective and occasionally mediating conflicts between us when emotions became too intense for productive communication. When Sarah suggested that Maya's behavior represented typical adolescent rebellion that would improve with continued patience and consistency, I wondered whether she was offering supportive encouragement or avoiding the uncomfortable truth that our relationship was fundamentally flawed beyond repair. When she reminded me of positive moments between Maya and me, pointing to evidence of progress that I might be overlooking in my current emotional state, I questioned whether she was observing our interactions accurately or interpreting them through the lens of wanting to believe that her friend was succeeding as a parent figure. The isolation that accompanied this period of intensive self-doubt proved to be among its most destructive aspects. I withdrew from social activities that might require explaining Maya's behavior, or discussing our relationship dynamics with other adults who might offer unwelcome opinions or ask probing questions. Invitations to family-friendly community events became sources of anxiety, rather than opportunities for connection with neighbors and acquaintances who had been supportive during the early phases of Maya's transition to living with me. I declined dinner parties where other parents would naturally share stories about their children's achievements, challenges, and developmental milestones, afraid that any discussion of my situation would reveal the extent of my failure to create the loving family environment that Maya needed and deserved. Social isolation intensified the negative thought patterns by removing external perspectives that might have provided balance or alternative interpretations of Maya's behavior and our relationship dynamics. Maya appeared to sense my growing uncertainty and vulnerability, responding by increasing both the frequency and intensity of her attacks on my legitimacy as her guardian and my effectiveness as a parental figure. She began making explicit comparisons between our current living situation and hypothetical alternatives that consistently highlighted my inadequacies and shortcomings. She would speculate about how different her life might have been if Lauren had survived, if she had been placed with a traditional two-parent family, or if she had been allowed to pursue independent living arrangements with friends whose families might provide more natural and nurturing environments. These comparisons were systematically designed to emphasize aspects of our relationship that Maya found unsatisfactory, while suggesting that alternatives would have provided superior emotional support, practical guidance, and social opportunities. Her references to my lack of parenting experience, my focus on academic achievement rather than emotional development, and my failure to understand teenage social dynamics were delivered with surgical precision that maximized psychological impact while maintaining plausible deniability about deliberate cruelty. The college preparation process became another battlefield where Maya could demonstrate her independence from my influence while highlighting my limitations as a mentor and guide. She made explicit statements that her academic success was entirely her own achievement, and that my role was limited to providing financial resources and transportation to various educational activities. When school counselors praised her accomplishments and inquired about family support systems, Maya would credit Lauren's early influence while describing me as helpful with logistics but uninvolved in important decision-making processes. During particularly difficult moments, I found myself questioning not only my effectiveness as Maya's guardian, but also my underlying motivations for accepting responsibility for her care following Lauren's death. Had I genuinely believed that I could provide the loving family environment she needed for healthy development? Or had my decision been motivated primarily by guilt about my sister's tragic death and social expectations about family obligations during crisis situations? Had I underestimated the complexity of raising a traumatized child? Or had I simply lacked the emotional intelligence and intuitive parenting capabilities necessary for such challenging circumstances? The possibility that my efforts to help Maya had actually caused additional psychological damage became a recurring source of anxiety during sleepless nights. Perhaps a different family with more parenting experience, greater emotional warmth, or better understanding of childhood trauma could have provided the therapeutic environment Maya needed for healing and healthy attachment formation. Perhaps my academic approach to parenting, which emphasized structure, achievement, and logical problem-solving, had neglected the emotional healing that should have been prioritized during her adjustment period. Physical symptoms began accompanying the emotional distress as weeks of self-doubt accumulated into chronic stress that affected my health and daily functioning. Tension headaches became daily occurrences that interfered with concentration and productivity. My appetite disappeared almost entirely, leading to weight loss that concerned Sarah enough to comment on changes in my appearance and energy levels. Professional responsibilities that had once been engaging and manageable became exhausting performances that required enormous effort to complete at acceptable quality standards. The irony was unmistakable that Maya's accusation about never being her real mother had created precisely the kind of emotional distance and ineffectiveness that she seemed to prefer in our relationship. My growing uncertainty about my role and capabilities was making me less assertive about boundaries, less confident about guidance and discipline, and less emotionally available for the challenging conversations that healthy parent-child relationships require during adolescent development. I was becoming the inadequate guardian that Maya had always claimed I was, not through lack of effort or commitment, but through paralysis created by constant self-questioning and doubt about my fundamental competence. The discovery that would transform everything began not with dramatic revelations, but with a mundane task that I had been avoiding for months. Maya's upcoming departure for Northwestern University required organizing her important documents, including her birth certificate, social security card, and medical records that would be necessary for college registration and health services enrollment. I had been postponing this administrative work partly because it felt like preparation for her permanent exit from my life, but primarily because Maya's hostility made any discussion of practical matters feel like an intrusion she would resent. The documents were stored in a fireproof safe in my bedroom closet, along with my own important papers and the few items I had inherited when my sister Lauren died. I rarely accessed this safe, and I had not reviewed its contents systematically since Maya first arrived 3 years earlier. Opening it felt like revisiting a painful chapter of loss and responsibility that I had learned to manage through compartmentalization rather than direct engagement with the memories it contained. Maya's birth certificate was exactly where I remembered placing it, along with her immunization records and the legal documents that had formalized my guardianship. But as I gathered these materials, I noticed several items that I had forgotten were there, including a manila envelope labeled Lauren's personal papers in my own handwriting from years earlier. The envelope contained documents I had collected from Lauren's apartment after her death, items that had seemed potentially important, but not immediately relevant to caring for Maya. Curiosity rather than necessity prompted me to examine the contents of this envelope. Most of the papers were exactly what I expected: insurance policies, employment records, financial statements, and correspondence related to routine adult responsibilities. But buried among these mundane documents was a folder labeled Medical Records that contained information I had never seen before, including genetic testing results that Lauren had apparently completed shortly before Maya's birth. The genetic screening report was dated approximately 6 months before Maya was born, suggesting that Lauren had undergone testing during her pregnancy to assess potential health risks for her unborn child. This was not unusual, as many women undergo such screening as part of routine prenatal care. What caught my attention was the comprehensive nature of the testing, which included analysis of hereditary conditions that required detailed family medical history to interpret accurately. The report included sections analyzing risks for various genetic conditions based on both maternal and paternal family histories. Lauren had apparently provided extensive information about our family's medical background, including details about our parents, health conditions, and the genetic factors that might affect her child's development. The thoroughness of this information suggested that she had been particularly concerned about ensuring comprehensive prenatal care. What struck me as unusual was the section documenting paternal family history, which included genetic markers and medical conditions that I did not recognize from my knowledge of Maya's father. Lauren had always been somewhat secretive about Maya's paternity, explaining that the relationship had been brief and that the father was not involved in Maya's life. I had assumed this meant she preferred not to discuss a painful or complicated situation, so I had never pressed for details. The genetic markers listed in the paternal history section included several conditions that ran in families, but they did not match anything I knew about our own family's medical background. More puzzling was the notation that certain paternal genetic factors were, quote, consistent with Northern European ancestry, while our family background was primarily Mediterranean and Eastern European. This discrepancy seemed significant enough to suggest either an error in the testing process or information that I had never received about Maya's biological father. My initial response was to assume that Lauren had provided incomplete or inaccurate information about Maya's father's family history, possibly because she had limited knowledge about his background or because she was protecting his privacy. However, the more I studied the document, the more certain genetic markers seemed familiar in ways that I could not immediately identify. The combination of specific conditions and ancestral patterns triggered a vague recognition that I could not quite place. The breakthrough came when I retrieved my own genetic testing results from a different folder in the safe. I had completed consumer genetic testing through a popular DNA analysis company approximately 2 years earlier, primarily out of curiosity about ancestry composition and potential health risks. Sarah had encouraged me to pursue this testing as part of a broader effort to better understand family medical history that might be relevant for Maya's long-term health planning. Comparing Lauren's prenatal genetic screening with my own DNA analysis revealed patterns that were impossible to ignore. Several of the genetic markers that had been attributed to Maya's paternal family history in Lauren's prenatal report matched exactly with markers present in my own genetic profile. The probability of such extensive overlap between unrelated individuals was astronomically low, suggesting that the genetic similarities were not coincidental but indicative of actual family relationships. The implications of this discovery were staggering and initially incomprehensible. If the genetic markers in Maya's paternal history matched my own genetic profile, then either the testing was fundamentally flawed or Maya's biological father was genetically related to me. Given that Lauren and I were sisters, and that I had never had a relationship with anyone who could be Maya's father, the only logical explanation was that Maya's father was my brother or another close male relative. The problem was that I did not have a brother, and our extended family included no male relatives who could have been involved with Lauren during the relevant time period. Our father had died several years before Maya's conception, and we had no male cousins or close family friends who fit the timeline or circumstances. The genetic evidence suggested a family relationship that simply did not exist according to everything I knew about our family structure and Lauren's personal life. The confusion was compounded by my growing certainty that Lauren had never mentioned being involved with anyone related to our family. She had been secretive about Maya's father, but she had consistently indicated that he was someone from outside our social circle whom I had never met. The possibility that she had been romantically involved with a male relative without ever mentioning this fact seemed both unlikely and deeply troubling. I spent several hours reviewing both sets of genetic data, checking and rechecking the comparisons to ensure that I had not misinterpreted the technical information. The matches were extensive and undeniable, covering multiple genetic markers across different chromosomes. The probability calculations included in both reports confirmed that the level of genetic similarity indicated close family relationships rather than random coincidence. The emotional impact of this discovery was profound and disorienting. Everything I thought I knew about Maya's family history, Lauren's personal life, and our family's genetic background was being challenged by objective scientific evidence that contradicted fundamental assumptions I had held for years. The revelation felt like discovering that a familiar landscape had been completely rearranged without my knowledge or understanding. More troubling was the realization that this genetic information had implications for Maya's identity and family relationships that extended far beyond my own confusion. If the paternal genetic markers in her prenatal screening matched my DNA profile, then Maya's biological parentage was fundamentally different from what both she and I had believed throughout her entire life. The father she had never known was apparently related to the family she had been living with for 3 years. The discovery also raised disturbing questions about Lauren's honesty and the secret she had kept about Maya's conception and paternity. Why had she provided genetic information that suggested family relationships without explaining the actual circumstances? Had she deliberately concealed Maya's true parentage? And if so, what had motivated such deception? Had she planned to reveal the truth eventually? Or had she intended for these secrets to remain buried permanently? I found myself questioning every conversation I had ever had with Lauren about Maya's father and family background. Her reluctance to discuss the topic had seemed understandable given the assumption that it involved a painful or complicated relationship with someone outside our family. But if Maya's father was actually related to us, Lauren's secrecy took on much more troubling implications about deception and hidden family dynamics. The practical implications were equally overwhelming. If this genetic evidence was accurate, then Maya's entire understanding of her family history and biological identity was based on incomplete or false information. She had spent 3 years living with relatives she did not know were relatives, while grieving for a mother who had kept fundamental secrets about her parentage. The revelation would require both of us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about our family relationships and Maya's place within them. The timing of this discovery felt both ironic and devastating. Maya was preparing to leave for college while actively rejecting any meaningful relationship with me as her guardian. She had spent years insisting that I would never be her real family, while apparently being unaware that I was genetically closer to her than either of us had ever imagined. The genetic evidence suggested that our connection was not just the result of legal guardianship arrangements but actual biological family relationships. I realized that pursuing this discovery further would require additional genetic testing to confirm the initial findings and clarify the specific nature of the family relationships involved. The consumer genetic testing I had completed was not designed for detailed family relationship analysis, and the prenatal screening from Lauren's medical records provided only partial information about Maya's genetic background. More comprehensive testing would be necessary to understand the full implications of the patterns I had identified. The decision to pursue additional testing felt momentous, because it would either confirm or refute discoveries that could transform Maya's understanding of her identity and our relationship. If the genetic evidence was accurate, she would learn that the family connections she had been rejecting were actually more fundamental and permanent than either of us had realized. If the evidence was flawed or misinterpreted, she would be subjected to confusion and false hope without any corresponding benefit. More immediately, I faced the question of whether to share this preliminary discovery with Maya before obtaining confirmation through additional testing. Her hostility toward me made any discussion of family relationships difficult, and introducing uncertain genetic information could damage our relationship further if the evidence proved inconclusive. But concealing potentially life-changing information about her biological parentage seemed equally problematic, especially given her approaching departure for college. The weight of this discovery felt too significant to bear alone, but I was uncertain about whom to consult for guidance. The genetic evidence raised questions that extended beyond my expertise in interpreting DNA analysis, and the family implications were too complex and sensitive for casual discussion with friends or colleagues. I needed advice from someone who could understand both the scientific and emotional dimensions of what I had uncovered. What I could not have anticipated was that this genetic puzzle represented only the beginning of a much larger revelation about family secrets, hidden relationships, and the truth about Maya's parentage that would challenge everything both of us believed about our identities and the connections that bound us together. The weight of my genetic discovery demanded professional consultation, but finding the right expert proved more challenging than I had anticipated. The implications of what I had uncovered required someone who understood both the technical aspects of genetic analysis and the complex family dynamics that such revelations could create. After extensive research, I identified Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a genetic counselor at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, who specialized in family relationship analysis and the psychological impact of unexpected genetic discoveries. Dr. Martinez agreed to meet with me after I explained the general nature of my situation during our initial phone conversation. Her office was located in the medical genetics department, surrounded by resources and expertise that made the scientific aspects of my discovery feel more manageable and less overwhelming. She had spent 15 years helping families navigate complex genetic information, and her experience with similar situations provided the professional perspective I desperately needed. During our first meeting, I presented the genetic evidence I had compiled, including my own DNA analysis results and the prenatal screening documentation from Lauren's medical records. Dr. Martinez reviewed these materials with the systematic thoroughness of someone accustomed to evaluating complex genetic information for accuracy and clinical significance. Her initial assessment confirmed my preliminary interpretation, while also identifying additional analysis that would be necessary to establish definitive conclusions. Dr. Martinez explained that the genetic markers I had identified did indeed suggest close family relationships between Maya's biological father and myself, but that the specific nature of these relationships required more comprehensive testing to determine with certainty. The consumer genetic testing I had completed provided valuable information, but lacked the detailed analysis necessary for precise family relationship determination. She recommended a comprehensive DNA analysis that would examine hundreds of genetic markers and provide probability calculations for various family relationship scenarios. The process she outlined would require DNA samples from both Maya and myself, analyzed through specialized laboratory techniques that could determine exact degrees of family relationship with scientific precision. The testing would take approximately 4 weeks to complete and would provide definitive answers about the genetic connection suggested by my preliminary evidence. More importantly, the results would include detailed interpretation and counseling support to help navigate the emotional and practical implications of whatever we discovered. Dr. Martinez also addressed the ethical and psychological considerations involved in pursuing such testing without Maya's initial knowledge or consent. She explained that genetic information about family relationships belonged to all parties involved, and that Maya had a right to understand her biological heritage and family connections. However, she also acknowledged the complex family dynamics that made immediate disclosure challenging, particularly given Maya's current hostility toward me and her imminent departure for college. Her recommendation was that I complete the preliminary genetic analysis to confirm or refute my initial findings before involving Maya in the process. If the comprehensive testing confirmed significant family relationships, then Maya would need to be informed about the discoveries and given the opportunity to participate in additional testing if she chose to do so. This approach would provide definitive information while respecting Maya's autonomy and emotional readiness to process potentially life-changing revelations. The conversation with Dr. Martinez also helped me understand the broader context of family secrets and genetic discoveries that had become increasingly common as DNA testing became more accessible and sophisticated. She described numerous cases where families had uncovered unexpected relationships, paternity revelations, and biological connections that contradicted long-held assumptions about family history. These discoveries often created initial trauma and confusion, but frequently led to deeper understanding and stronger family bonds once the initial shock subsided. Her professional experience provided reassurance that whatever we discovered would be manageable with appropriate support and communication. Families regularly navigated complex genetic revelations by focusing on the fundamental relationships and care they had built together, rather than being defined exclusively by biological connections. The key was ensuring that all parties had access to accurate information and professional guidance throughout the process of understanding and integrating new knowledge about family relationships. Dr. Martinez scheduled my comprehensive genetic analysis for the following week and provided detailed information about the testing process, timeline, and types of results I could expect. She also gave me resources for understanding genetic relationship terminology and probability calculations that would help me interpret the eventual findings. Most importantly, she offered ongoing counseling support throughout the process, recognizing that genetic discoveries often raised emotional and practical questions that extended far beyond the scientific results themselves. The week between scheduling the test and providing my DNA sample felt interminable, filled with anticipation about finally obtaining definitive answers and anxiety about the implications of what I might learn. I found myself observing Maya with new attention, looking for physical characteristics or personality traits that might reflect genetic connections I had never previously considered. The possibility that she was more closely related to me than we had ever known added layers of meaning to interactions that had felt strained and difficult for months. Maya seemed to sense my increased attention and responded with her typical suspicion and hostility. When I asked casual questions about her college preparation or summer plans, she interpreted my interest as intrusive monitoring rather than genuine concern. When I offered assistance with tasks like shopping for dorm room supplies or organizing her academic records, she treated my offers as evidence that I was trying to maintain control over her life rather than support her transition to independence. The irony of this dynamic was not lost on me as I waited for genetic test results that might reveal we were much closer biologically than either of us had ever imagined. Maya was working systematically to establish emotional distance between us at exactly the moment when I was discovering evidence of fundamental biological connections that could not be severed by her rejection or hostility. The juxtaposition felt like a cosmic joke designed to highlight the complexity of family relationships and the unpredictable ways that scientific discoveries could challenge assumptions about identity and belonging. My relationship with Sarah became particularly important during this waiting period as I struggled with the decision about how much to share about my genetic investigation. Sarah had been my primary source of emotional support throughout the challenges of raising Maya, and she understood the dynamics of our relationship better than anyone else in my life. However, the implications of what I was investigating felt too sensitive and potentially explosive to discuss without more definitive information. I chose to explain that I was pursuing genetic counseling to better understand Maya's family medical history for her college health records, which was technically accurate, while avoiding the more dramatic implications of what I had discovered. Sarah supported this decision and offered to accompany me to appointments if I needed additional emotional support. Her willingness to provide practical assistance without demanding detailed explanations reinforced my appreciation for her friendship and her respect for the complexity of family situations. The genetic testing appointment itself was surprisingly routine, involving simple saliva collection and completion of detailed family history questionnaires. Dr. Martinez explained that the analysis would examine hundreds of genetic markers across multiple chromosomes to establish precise probability calculations for various family relationship scenarios. The laboratory would compare my genetic profile with the partial information available from Maya's prenatal screening to determine the most likely explanations for the genetic similarities I had identified. During the sample collection process, Dr. Martinez also prepared me for the range of possible outcomes and their implications. The testing might confirm that Maya's biological father was indeed closely related to me, which would require careful consideration of how to share this information with Maya and integrate it into our understanding of family relationships. Alternatively, the testing might reveal that the initial genetic similarities were coincidental or resulted from more distant family connections that did not fundamentally alter Maya's parentage or our relationship dynamics. The most challenging scenario to consider was the possibility that the genetic evidence would confirm close family relationships, while raising additional questions about the specific circumstances of Maya's conception and Lauren's decision to conceal this information. Dr. Martinez explained that families often faced complex situations where genetic discoveries revealed information that deceased family members had chosen not to share during their lifetimes. These revelations required careful processing and professional support to integrate new knowledge without damaging existing family relationships. As I left the genetic counseling appointment with my tests scheduled and comprehensive information about the analysis process, I felt simultaneously relieved to be taking definitive action and terrified about the potential implications of what I might learn. The 4-week waiting period for results would require patience and emotional preparation for revelations that could transform everything Maya and I understood about our family relationships and biological connections. The timing of this investigation felt particularly poignant, given Maya's approaching departure for college and her continued insistence that I would never be her real family. If the genetic testing confirmed that we were more closely related than we had ever known, her departure would represent not just the end of my guardianship responsibilities, but potentially the loss of a niece who was unaware of our biological connection. The possibility that she might leave for college without ever knowing the truth about our family relationships felt like a missed opportunity that could never be recovered. During quiet moments over the following days, I found myself imagining various scenarios for how Maya might respond to genetic evidence of our biological connection. In optimistic moments, I envisioned her feeling relief and validation about the family bond we had built together, finally understanding that her resistance to accepting me as family had been based on incomplete information about our actual relationship. In more pessimistic moments, I worried that such revelations would feel like additional betrayal and deception, reinforcing her belief that the adults in her life had consistently withheld important information about her identity and family history. The most likely scenario seemed to involve a complex mixture of emotions and reactions that would require time, patience, and professional support to navigate successfully. Regardless of Maya's initial response, the genetic information would provide a foundation for understanding our relationship that was based on scientific evidence, rather than legal arrangements or emotional dynamics alone. This foundation might eventually support a stronger and more authentic connection between us, but it would require careful communication and mutual commitment to working through the implications together. The professional guidance from Dr. Martinez had provided structure and support for pursuing these discoveries in a responsible and ethical manner. However, the ultimate success of this investigation would depend not just on the genetic evidence, but on Maya's willingness to engage with new information about her family history and our relationship. The approaching test results represented both an ending and a beginning, potentially resolving months of questions while creating new opportunities for understanding and connection that neither of us had previously imagined possible. The 4-week waiting period for genetic test results created an unexpected opportunity for deeper investigation into family history and circumstances that I had never previously questioned. Rather than spending this time in passive anxiety about the eventual findings, I decided to conduct a comprehensive review of Lauren's personal effects and documents to better understand the context surrounding Maya's birth and the potential secrets that might explain the genetic inconsistencies I had discovered. This investigation required me to approach Lauren's remaining possessions with the systematic thoroughness of someone searching for specific information rather than simply preserving memories. I had initially sorted through her belongings 3 years earlier with the primary goal of identifying items that might comfort Maya during her transition to living with me, while setting aside documents and personal papers for potential future reference. Now I needed to examine these materials with new questions and a more analytical perspective. Lauren's personal papers were stored in several boxes in my basement, organized by category but not thoroughly examined since her death. The boxes contained everything from financial records and employment documents to personal correspondence and creative writing projects that revealed aspects of her life I had never fully understood. The process of reviewing these materials systematically proved both emotionally challenging and surprisingly illuminating about Lauren's personality, relationships, and decision-making during the years leading up to Maya's birth. The most significant discovery emerged from Lauren's journal entries during the period surrounding Maya's conception and early pregnancy. Lauren had been a consistent journal writer throughout her adult life, documenting her thoughts and experiences with remarkable honesty and detail. Her entries from the relevant time period revealed a level of emotional complexity and personal struggle that she had never shared with me during our regular conversations as sisters. The journal entries indicated that Lauren had been involved in a relationship that she described as both passionate and problematic during the months leading up to Maya's conception. She wrote extensively about her conflicted feelings regarding someone she referred to only as M throughout the entries, never using a full name or providing identifying details that would clarify his identity. The relationship appeared to involve significant secrecy and emotional intensity that had created considerable stress and uncertainty in Lauren's life. Lauren's descriptions of M suggested someone who was unavailable for a conventional relationship due to circumstances she never explicitly explained in her journal entries. She wrote about stolen moments together, complicated logistics for spending time with him, and her growing frustration with the limitations imposed by his situation. The pattern described in these entries suggested either a married man or someone whose professional or social position made their relationship inappropriate or potentially damaging if discovered. The entries also revealed Lauren's growing concern about the possibility of pregnancy and her complex emotions about that prospect. She wrote about hoping that pregnancy might force M to make definitive decisions about their relationship, while simultaneously worrying that it would drive him away permanently. Her ambivalence about pregnancy was striking, suggesting that Maya's conception occurred during a period of significant uncertainty and emotional turmoil in Lauren's life. Most relevant to my current investigation were Lauren's references to family complications that might arise if her relationship with M became public knowledge. She wrote about her fear that others would not understand the circumstances that had brought them together, and her worry about potential damage to family relationships if the truth were revealed. These concerns suggested that M was someone connected to our family or social circle in ways that would make their relationship particularly controversial or problematic. The journal entries also documented Lauren's process of deciding how to handle her pregnancy and the question of paternity disclosure. She wrote extensively about her determination to raise Maya independently rather than complicate everyone's lives by revealing the identity of Maya's father. Her decision appeared to be motivated by a combination of protecting M from consequences she believed he could not handle and maintaining control over her own life and Maya's future. Lauren's reflections on parenthood revealed both her excitement about becoming a mother and her anxiety about the challenges of single parenthood without family support for the father's identity. She wrote about her plans to create a stable and loving environment for Maya, while protecting her from the complications that might arise from knowledge about her conception. Her commitment to secrecy appeared absolute, with repeated affirmations that she would never reveal Maya's paternity regardless of future circumstances. These journal discoveries provided crucial context for understanding Lauren's behavior and decision-making, but they also raised additional questions about the identity of Maya's father and the specific family connections that my genetic investigation had suggested. Lauren's references to family complications and her determination to protect everyone involved strongly suggested that M was indeed someone connected to our family circle, but the journal entries provided no definitive identification. My investigation expanded to include Lauren's personal correspondence during the relevant time period, searching for additional clues about her relationships and social connections. Her email archives and physical letters revealed a rich social life with numerous friends and professional contacts, but none of the correspondence provided obvious candidates for the mysterious M, who had been central to her emotional life during Maya's conception. The absence of evidence was itself illuminating, suggesting that Lauren had been exceptionally careful about maintaining privacy regarding this relationship. Her correspondence with friends included references to dating and social activities, but no mention of serious romantic involvement during the months when her journal entries indicated intense emotional connection with quote. This pattern suggested deliberate compartmentalization of different aspects of her life to maintain secrecy about the relationship that had resulted in Maya's conception. I also reviewed Lauren's calendar and appointment records from the relevant period, looking for patterns or recurring commitments that might provide clues about her activities and relationships. Her schedule during that time showed regular work obligations, social activities with friends, and family commitments that appeared normal and unremarkable. However, there were several recurring appointments marked only with initials or coded references that might have represented meetings with M or activities related to their relationship. The most intriguing discovery was a series of weekend trips that Lauren had taken during the months surrounding Maya's conception, described in her calendar only as, quote, family visits or personal time. Her journal entries from these weekends suggested emotional intensity and relationship developments that seemed inconsistent with the casual family visits described in her calendar. The discrepancy suggested that these trips might have involved meetings with M rather than the family activities she had indicated to others. My investigation also included reviewing family photographs and social media archives from the relevant time period, searching for evidence of Lauren's social connections and potential romantic relationships. The photographs showed Lauren at various family gatherings, work events, and social activities, but none provided obvious clues about mysterious romantic involvement or relationships that she had concealed from family members. However, careful examination of family gathering photographs revealed an interesting pattern regarding attendance and participation. Lauren appeared in most family event photos during the months before Maya's conception, but her presence became less consistent during the period when her journal indicated intense involvement with M. The pattern suggested that her secret relationship might have complicated her ability to participate in family activities normally, possibly because M was also connected to these gatherings in ways that would make their interaction awkward or potentially revealing. The photograph review also prompted me to examine family event planning and communication during that period, looking for additional context about Lauren's behavior and potential connections to other family members or friends. Email chains and text message records showed typical coordination of family gatherings, but Lauren's participation in planning discussions had become notably less engaged during the months when her journal indicated romantic preoccupation. This investigation process was emotionally challenging because it required viewing Lauren's life and decision-making through the lens of current questions rather than cherished memories of our relationship as sisters. Reading her private thoughts about relationships and pregnancy forced me to confront the reality that she had been living with significant secrets and emotional complexity that she had never shared with me despite our close relationship throughout her adult life. The investigation also highlighted the extent to which Lauren had been protecting multiple people through her decision to conceal Maya's paternity. Her journal entries repeatedly emphasized her concern for the potential consequences that disclosure might create for, quote, M, for Maya and for family relationships generally. Her willingness to accept the challenges of single parenthood rather than complicate other people's lives demonstrated both self-sacrifice and determination to maintain control over a situation that might otherwise have created lasting damage. As the waiting period for genetic test results progressed, my investigation had provided valuable context for understanding Lauren's behavior and motivations, but it had not definitively identified Maya's biological father or confirmed the genetic relationships suggested by my preliminary evidence. The journal entries and other material strongly supported the theory that Maya's father was someone connected to our family circle, but they did not provide the specific identification that would explain the genetic similarities I had discovered. The investigation had also deepened my appreciation for the complexity of Lauren's situation and the difficult decisions she had made regarding Maya's parentage and family relationships. Her determination to protect everyone involved while providing a stable environment for Maya demonstrated remarkable strength and commitment. But it had also created the current situation where Maya was unaware of potentially significant family connections that might affect her understanding of identity and belonging. Most importantly, the investigation had prepared me emotionally and intellectually for whatever the genetic test results might reveal. Whether the results confirmed close family relationships, revealed more distant connections, or disproved my initial theories entirely, I now understood the broader context of family dynamics and decision-making that had shaped Maya's early life and current circumstances. The approaching conclusion of the waiting period would provide definitive answers to questions that had emerged from careful analysis of genetic evidence and thorough investigation of family history. These answers would determine not only the accuracy of my theories about Maya's parentage, but also the future direction of our relationship and her understanding of family connections that had been hidden since her birth. The call from Dr. Martinez arrived on a Thursday morning exactly 4 weeks after my genetic testing, interrupting a client presentation that suddenly felt insignificant compared to the information I was about to receive. Her voice carried the careful professionalism of someone delivering results that would fundamentally alter family relationships and personal identity. She requested an immediate appointment to discuss the findings in person, explaining that the complexity of the results required detailed explanation and counseling support that could not be adequately provided over the telephone. I arrived at Dr. Martinez's office 30 minutes early, unable to concentrate on anything other than the impending revelation that would either confirm or refute the theories I had developed about Maya's parentage and our family connections. The waiting area felt simultaneously familiar and foreign, representing the threshold between my current understanding of family relationships and whatever truth the genetic analysis had revealed about our biological connections. Dr. Martinez greeted me with the composed demeanor of someone who had delivered life-changing genetic information to hundreds of families. But I detected an underlying gravity in her expression that suggested the results were particularly significant. She led me to her private consultation room and arranged the testing documents on her desk with systematic precision, preparing to walk me through findings that would require careful explanation and emotional processing. The comprehensive genetic analysis had examined over 300 genetic markers across multiple chromosomes, comparing my DNA profile with the partial genetic information available from Maya's prenatal screening records. The laboratory had calculated probability estimates for various family relationship scenarios, examining the likelihood that the genetic similarities I had identified represented different degrees of biological connection between Maya's father and myself. Dr. Martinez began by confirming that my initial observations about genetic similarities had been accurate and scientifically significant. The genetic markers that had appeared in Maya's paternal family history did indeed match extensively with my own genetic profile, indicating close biological relationships rather than coincidental similarities. The probability calculations supported my preliminary conclusion that Maya's biological father was genetically related to me with statistical certainty that exceeded 99%. The specific nature of these genetic relationships was even more remarkable than I had anticipated. The analysis indicated that Maya's biological father was not a distant relative or extended family connection, but rather someone who shared approximately 50% of genetic material with me. This level of genetic similarity was consistent with only the closest family relationships, specifically indicating that Maya's father was either my full brother or my biological child. Since I had never given birth to a male child and our family structure included no unknown brothers, the genetic evidence pointed to an explanation that initially seemed impossible. Dr. Martinez carefully reviewed the technical aspects of the analysis to ensure that I understood the precision and reliability of these findings before proceeding to discuss their implications for Maya's identity and our family relationships. The revelation that emerged from this genetic analysis was both scientifically definitive and emotionally staggering. Maya's biological father was my brother David, whose existence I had been completely unaware of throughout my entire life. The genetic testing had revealed that I had a twin brother who had been separated from our family at birth and whose identity had been concealed from both my parents and myself through adoption arrangements that had been kept secret for over 30 years. Dr. Martinez explained that such family secrets, while uncommon, were not unprecedented in her professional experience. Families sometimes made difficult decisions about child rearing during periods of economic hardship, health challenges, or social circumstances that made raising multiple children particularly difficult. Twin separations, though relatively rare, had occurred historically when families felt unable to provide adequate care for multiple infants simultaneously. The genetic evidence indicated that David and I were fraternal twins who had been separated shortly after birth, with David placed for adoption while I remained with our biological parents. Our parents had apparently chosen never to reveal the existence of my twin brother, creating a family secret that had persisted throughout their lives and had only been discovered through the genetic investigation prompted by Maya's parentage questions. This revelation explained not only the genetic similarities between Maya's paternal family history and my own DNA profile, but also the mysterious circumstances surrounding Lauren's secret relationship and her determination to conceal Maya's paternity. Lauren had apparently become romantically involved with David without initially realizing that he was my twin brother, and her discovery of this family connection had prompted her decision to maintain absolute secrecy about Maya's parentage. Dr. Martinez reviewed additional genetic evidence that supported this interpretation, including analysis of specific chromosomal markers that indicated David and I shared the same biological parents while confirming that Maya was indeed David's biological daughter. The testing had also revealed that Maya carried genetic markers from both sides of our family lineage, making her my biological niece through her father's relationship to me as my twin brother. The implications of these discoveries were profound and far-reaching, affecting not only my understanding of my own family history, but also Maya's identity and her place within family relationships she had never known existed. Maya had spent 3 years living with her biological aunt while believing that she was staying with a legal guardian who had no blood relationship to her family of origin. Her persistent rejection of family connections with me had been based on incomplete information about our actual biological relationship. Dr. Martinez addressed the emotional and practical considerations involved in sharing this information with Maya, emphasizing that genetic discoveries of this magnitude required careful planning and professional support to navigate successfully. Maya would need time and counseling assistance to process revelations about her parentage, her father's identity, and her biological relationships to family members she had been living with for years. The timing of these discoveries was particularly complex given Maya's imminent departure for college and her current hostility toward me as her guardian. Dr. Martinez recommended that Maya be informed about the genetic findings before beginning her college experience, as the stress of major life transitions could be significantly complicated by unresolved questions about identity and family relationships. However, she also emphasized that Maya would need ongoing counseling support to integrate this information without feeling overwhelmed or betrayed by the revelations. Dr. Martinez also addressed the question of locating David and potentially facilitating contact between Maya and her biological father. The genetic testing had confirmed his identity as Maya's father and my twin brother, but it had not provided information about his current whereabouts, personal circumstances, or willingness to engage with family members he had never known existed. Any attempt to contact David would require careful consideration of his privacy rights and emotional readiness to learn about family connections that might be equally surprising and overwhelming for him. The possibility that David was unaware of Maya's existence added another layer of complexity to the situation. Lauren's journal entries had suggested that she had maintained secrecy about Maya's paternity, partly to protect David from responsibilities or complications he might not be prepared to handle. If David had been unaware that their relationship had resulted in pregnancy and childbirth, learning about Maya's existence would represent a shocking discovery about his own parenthood and family relationships. Dr. Martinez provided resources for family reunion counseling and guidance for managing complex family discoveries that involved multiple parties who had been unaware of their biological connections. She emphasized that successful navigation of such revelations required patience, professional support, and commitment from all parties to approach the situation with empathy and understanding for everyone's emotional needs and personal circumstances. The consultation concluded with Dr. Martinez offering to facilitate conversations with Maya about the genetic discoveries, providing professional mediation that could help navigate initial reactions and ensure that Maya received accurate information along with appropriate emotional support. She also recommended ongoing counseling for both Maya and myself as we worked through the implications of these discoveries for our relationship and our understanding of family identity and connection. As I left Drive Martinez's office with comprehensive documentation of the genetic analysis and resources for managing family revelations, I felt simultaneously vindicated in my investigative instincts and overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I had discovered. The genetic evidence had confirmed that Maya and I were indeed biological family members, but the specific nature of our connection through my previously unknown twin brother created complexities that extended far beyond anything I had anticipated. The drive home provided time to process the emotional impact of learning that I had a twin brother whose existence had been concealed throughout my entire life. The realization that our parents had made the difficult decision to separate twins at birth and maintain that secret until their deaths raised questions about family dynamics and decision-making that I would never be able to resolve through direct conversation with them. More immediately, I faced the challenge of sharing these discoveries with Maya in ways that would help her understand her biological heritage, without feeling betrayed by the years of secrecy that had surrounded her parentage. The revelation that I was her biological aunt through her father's identity as my twin brother would require careful explanation and ongoing support as she processed the implications for her sense of identity and family belonging. The genetic testing had provided definitive answers to questions that had emerged from careful observation and systematic investigation, but it had also created new questions about family relationships, personal identity, and the complex circumstances that had shaped all our lives in ways we were only beginning to understand. The journey from genetic discovery to family understanding would require courage, patience, and commitment to truth-telling that honored everyone's emotional needs, while building foundations for authentic relationships based on accurate knowledge of our biological connections. The results represented both an ending and a beginning, resolving months of uncertainty while opening possibilities for family relationships that none of us had previously imagined. The path forward would require navigating complex emotions and practical considerations, but it was built on the solid foundation of scientific evidence and professional guidance that could support genuine healing and connection among family members who had been separated by circumstances beyond their control. The genetic revelations required careful strategic planning before approaching Maya with information that would fundamentally alter her understanding of identity, family relationships, and the circumstances surrounding her birth. Dr. Martinez had emphasized that the success of such conversations depended heavily on preparation, timing, and the emotional support systems available to help Maya process discoveries that challenged everything she believed about her biological heritage and family connections. The complexity of the situation demanded coordination between multiple professional resources and careful consideration of Maya's psychological readiness to receive life-changing information. Dr. Martinez recommended involving Maya's existing therapist, Dr. Susan Chen, who had been working with Maya on college transition anxiety and family relationship issues for the past 6 months. Dr. Chen's established relationship with Maya would provide continuity and familiarity during discussions that would likely generate significant emotional upheaval and confusion. My first step involved scheduling a consultation with Dr. Chen to review the genetic findings and develop a comprehensive approach for presenting this information to Maya. Dr. Chen needed to understand the scientific evidence, the family relationship implications, and the potential psychological impact before she could effectively support Maya through the revelation process. The coordination between genetic counseling and psychological counseling would ensure that Maya received both accurate technical information and appropriate emotional support. Dr. Chen reviewed the genetic analysis documentation with the thoroughness of someone who understood the profound impact that family identity revelations could have on adolescent development and psychological well-being. She confirmed that Maya's recent therapy sessions had included discussions about her complicated feelings regarding family belonging and her persistent uncertainty about her place within our household. These conversations had revealed that Maya's hostility toward me often masked deeper anxieties about identity and acceptance, rather than simple rejection of our relationship. The therapeutic context provided crucial insights into Maya's emotional state and her likely responses to genetic discoveries about our biological connection. Dr. Chen explained that Maya's resistance to accepting me as family had been complicated by her unresolved grief about losing her mother and her fear of forming attachments that might result in additional loss. The revelation that we were biologically related through her father's identity as my twin brother would challenge her fundamental assumptions about family relationships, while potentially providing the security of permanent biological connection she had unconsciously sought. Dr. Chen also addressed the timing considerations that would affect Maya's ability to process this information effectively. Maya was scheduled to begin college orientation in 6 weeks, representing a major life transition that already involved significant stress and anxiety about independence, academic performance, and social adjustment. Adding family identity revelations to this period of change could either provide stabilizing context for her transition or create additional overwhelming complexity that interfered with her college preparation. After careful consideration of Maya's psychological profile and current circumstances, Dr. Chen recommended proceeding with the family discussion within the next 2 weeks, allowing sufficient time for initial processing and adjustment before Maya's departure for college. This timeline would provide opportunities for multiple conversations and therapeutic support sessions, while ensuring that Maya would not be leaving home with unresolved confusion about family relationships and biological identity. The preparation process also required developing a comprehensive communication strategy that would present complex genetic information in ways that Maya could understand and integrate without feeling overwhelmed or betrayed. Dr. Martinez provided detailed guidance on explaining genetic relationship terminology, probability calculations, and the scientific methods that had led to these discoveries. The technical aspects needed to be accessible to someone without scientific training while maintaining accuracy and credibility. Equally important was preparing emotional context that would help Maya understand the historical circumstances and family decisions that had created the secrecy surrounding her parentage. The revelation about my twin brother David's existence and his separation from our family at birth required careful explanation that honored the difficult decisions our parents had made, while acknowledging the impact these choices had on everyone affected by them. I spent considerable time developing written materials that would support the conversation with Maya, including family timeline documentation, genetic testing summaries, and resources for understanding adoption-related family separations. These materials would provide Maya with reference information she could review independently as she processed the initial revelations and formulated questions about her biological heritage and family relationships. The preparation process also involved practical considerations about potential contact with David and the possibility that Maya might want to pursue a relationship with her biological father. Dr. Martinez had provided guidance on locating separated family members through adoption registries and professional search services, but she had also emphasized the importance of respecting David's privacy and emotional readiness to learn about family connections he had never known existed. Research into David's potential whereabouts revealed limited but promising information through public records and social media searches. David appeared to be living in Milwaukee, working as an engineer for a renewable energy company, and maintaining a relatively private online presence that suggested stability and professional success. The geographic proximity to Chicago meant that potential future contact would be logistically feasible if both Maya and David were interested in pursuing family relationships. However, the question of when and how to approach David required additional careful consideration. Dr. Martinez recommended that Maya be informed about the genetic discoveries and given time to process this information before any attempts were made to contact David. Maya's emotional readiness and explicit consent would be essential before initiating contact with her biological father, particularly given the complexity of the circumstances and the potential impact on his personal life and family relationships. The preparation period also provided opportunities to strengthen my relationship with Maya in anticipation of revelations that might initially create additional stress between us. I focused on demonstrating consistent support for her college preparation and future goals, while avoiding confrontations about our relationship dynamics that might complicate the upcoming family discussion. This approach required considerable restraint given Maya's continued hostility, but it created a more stable foundation for the challenging conversations ahead. Sarah proved invaluable during this preparation period, providing both emotional support for me and practical assistance with logistics related to Maya's college transition. Sarah's perspective as an outside observer of our family dynamics helped me maintain realistic expectations about Maya's potential responses to the genetic revelations. while remaining optimistic about the long-term benefits of truth-telling and authentic family relationships. The financial and legal implications of the genetic discoveries also required consideration during the preparation period. Maya's status as my biological niece rather than simply my adopted ward had potential implications for inheritance planning, college financial aid calculations, and legal guardianship arrangements that might need modification or clarification. These practical matters were secondary to the emotional aspects of the revelation, but they represented additional complexity that needed professional guidance. I consulted with my attorney Michael Rodriguez about the legal implications of the genetic discoveries and their potential impact on existing guardianship arrangements and future estate planning. Michael confirmed that Maya's biological relationship to me through David would not automatically alter existing legal arrangements, but it might provide additional options for formalizing family relationships if Maya chose to pursue such changes after reaching adulthood. The college financial aid implications were more complex, as Maya's biological relationship to me might affect need-based aid calculations that had been based on the assumption that she was not related to my income and assets. Michael recommended consulting with Northwestern University's Financial Aid Office to ensure that Maya's aid package would not be jeopardized by revelations about family relationships that had not been disclosed during the application process. Throughout this preparation period, I maintained detailed documentation of the discovery process, professional consultations, and planning considerations that would help Maya understand how the genetic analysis had emerged from routine document organization rather than deliberate investigation into family secrets. This transparency would demonstrate that the revelations resulted from scientific discovery rather than intentional concealment or manipulation of information. The emotional preparation for these conversations required acknowledging my own complex feelings about learning that I had a twin brother whose existence had been concealed throughout my life. The revelation about David challenged my understanding of my parents' decision-making and family values while raising questions about what other family secrets might remain hidden. Processing these personal revelations was essential before I could effectively support Maya through her own identity discoveries. Dr. Chen provided individual counseling sessions to help me prepare emotionally for Maya's potential responses to the genetic revelations and develop strategies for maintaining supportive communication, regardless of her initial reactions. These sessions addressed my fears about Maya's possible anger, confusion, or renewed rejection, while reinforcing my commitment to providing accurate information and ongoing support for whatever decisions she made about family relationships and contact with David. The preparation period also involved creating contingency plans for various scenarios that might emerge from the family discussion. If Maya responded positively to the genetic revelations, we would need resources for supporting her emotional processing and potential contact with David. If she responded negatively with increased hostility or rejection, we would need strategies for maintaining basic communication and providing ongoing support despite relationship strain. Most importantly, the preparation period reinforced my commitment to approaching these revelations with Maya's best interests as the primary consideration, rather than my own hopes for improved family relationships. The genetic discoveries provided factual information about biological connections, but they did not guarantee emotional reconciliation or automatic improvement in our relationship dynamics. Maya's autonomy and emotional well-being would guide all decisions about how to proceed with family discussions and potential contact with David. As the preparation period concluded and the scheduled conversation with Maya approached, I felt simultaneously confident in the thoroughness of our planning and anxious about the unpredictable emotional territory we were about to enter. The genetic revelations would provide Maya with accurate information about her biological heritage and family relationships, but her response to this information would determine whether these discoveries became sources of healing and connection or additional complications in our already challenging family dynamics. The conversation that would transform our understanding of family relationships began on a Saturday morning in early May, when Maya's college preparation activities had created a natural pause in her typically busy schedule. I had coordinated with Dr. Chen to ensure that Maya would have an immediate therapy appointment available following our discussion, providing professional support for processing revelations that would challenge fundamental assumptions about her identity and biological heritage. Maya's initial resistance to having what she termed another serious conversation was predictable, given our recent relationship tensions and her approaching departure for college. She had been successfully avoiding extended interactions with me for weeks, treating our shared living space as temporary accommodation rather than family home. Her agreement to participate in this discussion required careful framing that emphasized the importance of information she needed before beginning her college experience. The living room setting I had chosen for this conversation was deliberately neutral and comfortable, designed to minimize the formal atmosphere that might increase Maya's defensive responses. I had arranged supportive materials within easy reach, including the genetic testing documentation, family timeline information, and contact details for both Dr. Martinez and Dr. Chen. The physical preparation reflected the careful emotional and strategic preparation that had preceded this crucial moment. Maya entered the conversation with visible reluctance and barely concealed irritation, settling into the armchair furthest from where I was sitting, and maintaining the kind of defensive body language that had characterized our interactions for months. Her opening comment that she hoped this would not take long because she had plans with friends established the emotional distance she intended to maintain throughout our discussion. I began by acknowledging the timing challenges and Maya's approaching college transition, explaining that the information I needed to share would provide important context for her family medical history and personal background that would be relevant for her college health services registration. This practical framing helped establish the conversation as necessary rather than optional, while avoiding immediate reference to the relationship implications that would emerge from the genetic discoveries. The presentation of genetic testing results required careful explanation of the technical processes and scientific methodology that had led to these discoveries. Maya's initial skepticism about why I had pursued genetic testing was predictable, but her scientific aptitude and college preparation in advanced biology courses provided a foundation for understanding the reliability and significance of DNA analysis results. Maya's attention became more focused as I explained the comprehensive nature of the genetic testing and the specific markers that had been analyzed to determine family relationships with statistical precision. Her questions about testing methodology and probability calculations demonstrated both her intellectual engagement with the scientific aspects and her growing awareness that this conversation involved information more significant than routine medical history documentation. The revelation about my previously unknown twin brother David required careful contextualization within the broader family history and the circumstances that had led to twin separation at birth. Maya's initial response was disbelief, mixed with confusion about how such fundamental family information could have remained hidden throughout my entire life. Her questions about family secrecy and parental decision-making reflected her struggle to understand how adults could maintain such significant concealment for decades. The explanation of how genetic analysis had revealed David's existence and his identity as Maya's biological father created the moment of profound realization that transformed Maya's understanding of every assumption she had held about her parentage and family relationships. The scientific evidence that demonstrated her biological connection to me through David's identity as my twin brother challenged her fundamental beliefs about family structure and her place within our household. Maya's immediate emotional response involved a complex mixture of shock, confusion, and anger that manifested in rapid-fire questions about the reliability of the genetic testing, the timeline of discoveries, and my motivations for pursuing this investigation. Her need to understand every aspect of how these revelations had emerged reflected both her analytical nature and her attempt to regain some sense of control over information that had completely disrupted her worldview. The most challenging aspect of this conversation involved addressing Maya's feelings of betrayal and deception regarding the years of secrecy that had surrounded her biological heritage. Her anger about Lauren's decision to conceal David's identity was complicated by her inability to confront her deceased mother about these choices. The displacement of this anger toward me as the bearer of unwelcome news was both understandable and emotionally difficult to navigate without becoming defensive. Maya's questions about David's current circumstances and potential availability for contact revealed her conflicted feelings about learning she had a biological father who was alive but completely unknown to her. The possibility of establishing a relationship with David represented both an opportunity for connection and a source of additional uncertainty about family relationships and personal identity that she was already struggling to understand. The discussion of David's separation from our family at birth and his placement for adoption required sensitive exploration of the historical circumstances and social pressures that had influenced our parents' decision-making. Maya's struggle to understand how family members could make such profound choices without considering the long-term implications for everyone involved reflected broader questions about family loyalty, sacrifice, and the unintended consequences of well-intentioned decisions. Maya's processing of the information about her biological relationship to me through David moved through several distinct emotional phases during our conversation. Initial shock gave way to analytical questioning about the scientific evidence, followed by anger about family secrecy, and eventually evolving into tentative consideration of what these discoveries might mean for our relationship and her understanding of family belonging. The most emotionally charged moment occurred when Maya directly confronted the irony that she had spent 3 years rejecting family connections with someone who was actually her biological aunt. Her recognition that her persistent insistence that I would never be her real family had been based on incomplete information about our actual relationship created a complex mixture of embarrassment, relief, and continued uncertainty about how to process these revelations. Maya's questions about my own emotional response to learning about David's existence provided opportunities for discussing the broader impact of family secrets and the ways that concealed information affects multiple generations. My explanation of how discovering my twin brother had challenged my understanding of family history and parental decision-making helped Maya recognize that these revelations were emotionally complex for everyone involved, rather than simply affecting her personal circumstances. The practical implications of these genetic discoveries required discussion of potential next steps and Maya's autonomy in deciding how to proceed with information about David's identity and location. I emphasized that learning about her biological father's existence did not create any obligations for contact or relationship development, but it did provide options that had not previously been available to her. Maya's questions about David's potential awareness of her existence revealed her concern about approaching someone who might be equally unprepared for family revelations. The possibility that David was unaware of Maya's birth and his status as her biological father added complexity to potential contact scenarios and emphasized the need for professional guidance in managing family reunification processes. The conversation also addressed how these discoveries might affect Maya's college experience and her ongoing relationship with me as her guardian and newly confirmed biological aunt. Maya's recognition that her departure for Northwestern University would not eliminate family connections that were based on genetic relationships rather than legal arrangements represented a significant shift in her understanding of permanence and belonging. Maya's request for time to process this information before making decisions about potential contact with David reflected emotional maturity and recognition that family relationship decisions required careful consideration rather than immediate reactions. Her agreement to participate in counseling sessions with Dr. Chen to work through the implications of these discoveries demonstrated her commitment to handling complex emotional territory responsibly. The conclusion of our conversation involved establishing practical next steps for supporting Maya's processing of genetic revelations while maintaining stability during her final weeks before college departure. We agreed on regular check-in conversations to address questions and concerns as they emerged, along with professional counseling support to help integrate new understanding of family relationships and biological heritage. Maya's final comment before leaving our conversation was particularly significant in demonstrating her evolving perspective on our relationship. Her acknowledgement that learning about our biological connection through David did not automatically resolve the relationship challenges we had experienced, but that it provided new context for understanding family bonds that transcended legal arrangements and emotional conflicts. The immediate aftermath of this conversation left both Maya and me processing complex emotions and practical considerations that would require ongoing attention and professional support. Maya's agreement to approach these revelations as opportunities for greater understanding rather than additional sources of family conflict represented progress toward authentic relationship building based on accurate information about our biological connections. The successful navigation of this crucial conversation had been supported by careful preparation, professional guidance, and commitment to Maya's emotional well-being above personal desires for relationship improvement. The foundation established through this discussion would determine whether genetic discoveries became sources of healing and connection, or additional complications in family dynamics that were already challenging to navigate. Maya's willingness to consider new possibilities for family relationships while maintaining appropriate boundaries about her autonomy and decision-making authority demonstrated emotional intelligence and maturity that provided hope for positive long-term outcomes from these revelations. The conversation had created opportunities for deeper understanding and authentic connection, while respecting Maya's need for time and space to process life-changing information about her identity and family heritage. The week following our genetic revelation conversation brought a fundamental shift in the atmospheric tension that had defined our household for months. Maya's initial shock and confusion gradually evolved into a more contemplative processing of information that challenged every assumption she had held about family relationships and personal identity. The hostile defiance that had characterized her interactions with me for years was replaced by thoughtful observation and careful questioning that suggested genuine engagement with the implications of our biological connection. Maya's first therapeutic session with Dr. Chen occurred 3 days after our conversation, providing professional support for processing revelations that extended far beyond typical adolescent identity exploration. Dr. Chen later reported that Maya had demonstrated remarkable emotional intelligence in articulating her complex feelings about learning that fundamental beliefs about her family structure had been based on incomplete information. Her ability to separate anger about family secrecy from appreciation for current relationship opportunities reflected psychological maturity that exceeded expectations for someone navigating such profound identity discoveries. The most significant change during this processing period involved Maya's voluntary initiation of conversations about family history and genetic relationships, rather than avoiding discussions about our connection. Her questions evolved from technical inquiries about DNA testing methodology to deeper exploration of family dynamics and the historical circumstances that had shaped all our lives in ways we were only beginning to understand. These conversations represented the first sustained positive interactions we had experienced since her arrival 3 years earlier. Maya's approach to understanding the family separation that had occurred at birth demonstrated both analytical thinking and emotional sophistication. She researched historical adoption practices and twin separation policies to better comprehend the social and economic pressures that had influenced our parents' decision-making during the 1990s. This research helped her contextualize family choices within broader societal frameworks, rather than interpreting them as personal rejections or deliberate deceptions designed to harm family relationships. The question of potential contact with David emerged as a central focus during Maya's processing period, requiring careful consideration of her emotional readiness and practical preparation for family reunification scenarios. Dr. Chen guided Maya through exploration of her motivations for wanting to meet her biological father, while also addressing potential challenges and disappointments that might arise from establishing relationships with family members who had been separated for decades. Maya's decision to pursue contact with David reflected both courage and realistic preparation for complex emotional territory. She recognized that meeting her biological father would not automatically resolve questions about identity and belonging that had been complicated by years of secrecy and separation. However, she also understood that avoiding contact would maintain uncertainty and missed opportunities for family connection that might provide valuable context for understanding her personal history and genetic heritage. The practical preparation for contacting David required professional guidance from Dr. Martinez, who had experience facilitating family reunifications involving genetic discoveries and adoption-related separations. The process involved multiple steps designed to respect David's privacy while providing opportunities for informed consent about family contact and relationship development. Initial outreach would be conducted through professional intermediaries who could explain the circumstances and genetic evidence before any direct communication occurred. Maya's participation in planning contact strategies demonstrated her growing maturity and commitment to handling family relationships responsibly rather than impulsively. She worked with both Dr. Chen and Dr. Martinez to develop realistic expectations about potential outcomes while preparing emotionally for scenarios ranging from enthusiastic family reunion to polite but distant acknowledgement of biological connections without ongoing relationship development. During this processing period, Maya also began reevaluating her relationship with me based on new understanding of our biological connection and the circumstances that had brought us together as guardian and ward. Her recognition that I had accepted responsibility for her care without knowing we were biological relatives provided new context for appreciating the commitment and sacrifice involved in her adoption. This reframing helped reduce her resentment about legal arrangements that had felt imposed rather than chosen. The shift in Maya's perspective became most evident during practical conversations about college preparation and our ongoing relationship during her university years. Instead of treating her departure for Northwestern as permanent escape from unwanted family obligations, she began considering how genetic discoveries might affect her connections to Chicago and her interest in maintaining family relationships despite geographic distance and educational independence. Maya's questions about my own processing of genetic revelations provided opportunities for deeper conversations about family identity and the ways that unexpected discoveries could transform understanding of personal history and family relationships. My willingness to share my own confusion and emotional complexity about learning of David's existence helped establish more authentic communication patterns based on mutual vulnerability rather than authority-based interactions. The college financial aid implications of genetic discoveries required careful navigation to ensure that Maya's Northwestern University aid package would not be jeopardized by revelations about family relationships that had not been disclosed during application processes. Consultation with university financial aid administrators confirmed that Maya's biological relationship to me through David would not automatically affect her aid eligibility, but it required updated documentation and explanation of circumstances that had only recently become known through genetic testing. Maya's academic performance during this processing period remained strong despite the emotional complexity of family revelations, demonstrating her ability to compartmentalize personal challenges while maintaining focus on educational goals and college preparation activities. Her teachers reported continued engagement with coursework and leadership responsibilities that reflected resilience and emotional stability throughout a period of significant personal discovery and adjustment. The relationship between Maya and Sarah evolved during this period as Maya began to understand Sarah's role as family friend and support system, rather than simply professional colleague. Sarah's consistent presence throughout Maya's adjustment to living with me gained new significance as Maya recognized the importance of stable relationships and ongoing support networks for navigating complex family dynamics and personal growth challenges. Maya's exploration of genetic heritage also prompted broader interest in family genealogy and cultural background that had been overshadowed by immediate concerns about legal guardianship and college preparation. Learning about David's existence raised questions about extended family relationships and cultural traditions that might provide additional context for understanding identity and personal history beyond the immediate nuclear family circumstances. The processing period also involved practical considerations about Maya's legal status and future family relationships, as she approached adulthood and gained autonomy over personal decisions about family contact and relationship development. The genetic discoveries did not automatically alter existing legal arrangements, but they provided additional options for formalizing family relationships if Maya chose to pursue such changes after reaching majority age. Maya's emotional development during this processing period reflected the kind of personal growth that often emerges from navigating challenging life transitions with appropriate professional support and family guidance. Her ability to integrate new information about biological heritage while maintaining focus on future goals and educational opportunities demonstrated psychological resilience and adaptive capacity that would serve her well throughout college and adult life experiences. The most encouraging development during this period involved Maya's voluntary expressions of appreciation for the stability and support I had provided throughout her adolescence, particularly during the challenging early years following Lauren's death. Her recognition that my commitment to her welfare had been motivated by genuine care rather than simple obligation created foundations for more authentic family relationships based on mutual respect and affection rather than legal requirements alone. Maya's preparation for college departure began incorporating consideration of family relationships and ongoing connections that would continue beyond her educational independence. Instead of viewing college as complete separation from family obligations, She began planning for regular communication and periodic visits that would maintain family bonds while allowing for personal growth and educational exploration. The collaborative approach to family relationship building that emerged during this processing period represented significant progress from the adversarial dynamics that had characterized previous years. Maya's willingness to participate in family planning and decision-making reflected her growing sense of agency and belonging within family structures that she now understood were based on biological connections, as well as legal arrangements and emotional commitments. Maya's questions about my long-term plans and family goals provided opportunities for discussing shared future possibilities rather than simply managing current conflicts and immediate college transition logistics. These conversations established frameworks for ongoing family relationships that could evolve and strengthen over time, rather than diminishing due to geographic distance or educational independence. The processing period concluded with Maya expressing readiness to pursue contact with David while maintaining realistic expectations about potential outcomes and ongoing professional support for navigating complex family relationship development. Her emotional preparation and practical planning reflected maturity and wisdom that provided confidence in her ability to handle whatever challenges or opportunities might emerge from biological family reunification efforts. The transformation in family dynamics during this processing period established foundations for authentic relationships based on accurate understanding of biological connections, historical circumstances, and mutual commitment to supporting each other's growth and well-being. The genetic revelations had created opportunities for genuine family bonds that transcended legal obligations and historical conflicts, providing hope for continued relationship development throughout Maya's college years and adult life experiences. The decision to locate David required systematic investigation and professional guidance to navigate the complex intersection of privacy rights, emotional preparation, and family reunification protocols. Maya's expressed interest in meeting her biological father represented a significant commitment that demanded careful planning to maximize the likelihood of positive outcomes, while protecting all parties from potential psychological harm or unwanted intrusion into established life circumstances. Dr. Martinez provided comprehensive guidance on locating separated family members through legitimate channels that respected privacy while offering opportunities for informed consent about family contact. The process involved multiple verification steps designed to confirm identity accurately before any direct communication occurred, ensuring that initial outreach would reach the correct individual and include appropriate context about the circumstances that had led to family separation and genetic discovery. The initial search utilized public records databases that contained information about individuals born during the relevant time period in the Chicago metropolitan area. David's birth records had been sealed through adoption procedures, but cross-referencing techniques involving birth dates, hospital records, and adoption agency documentation provided potential matches that could be verified through additional investigation and genetic testing if necessary. Maya participated actively in the search process, demonstrating remarkable emotional maturity in balancing her desire for contact with David against recognition that he might be unprepared for family revelations or uninterested in developing relationships with previously unknown relatives. Her approach reflected the therapeutic work she had completed with Dr. Chen to develop realistic expectations about family reunification while maintaining hope for meaningful connection and mutual understanding. The search methodology required examining educational records, employment histories, and social media presence to build comprehensive profiles of potential matches that could be verified through additional evidence before proceeding with contact attempts. This investigation process provided opportunities for Maya to learn about David's potential life circumstances, professional achievements, and personal interests that might indicate compatibility for family relationship development. Professional search consultants specializing in adoption reunification provided additional resources and expertise for locating individuals who had been separated through family placement decisions decades earlier. These specialists understood the legal constraints and ethical considerations involved in contacting people who might be unaware of biological family connections, while ensuring that all investigative methods respected privacy rights and personal autonomy. The breakthrough in locating David emerged through professional networking databases that revealed his current employment as a senior engineer at a renewable energy company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His professional profile indicated educational background in mechanical engineering from the University of Wisconsin, career progression through several engineering positions, and current specialization in wind energy system design and implementation. David's LinkedIn presence provided additional context about his professional interests, community involvement, and personal values that suggested compatibility with Maya's own environmental concerns and academic interests in sustainable technology. His participation in professional organizations related to renewable energy development indicated commitment to addressing climate change challenges that aligned with Maya's intended college focus on environmental science and policy development. The geographic proximity of Milwaukee to Chicago represented a significant advantage for potential family relationship development, as regular in-person contact would be logistically feasible if both parties expressed interest in ongoing communication and relationship building. The relatively short distance also reduced pressure for immediate decisions about the extent and frequency of contact, allowing relationships to develop gradually based on mutual comfort and interest. Maya's review of David's professional information generated both excitement about potential shared interests and anxiety about approaching someone whose life circumstances and achievements might create intimidation or uncertainty about family compatibility. His engineering expertise and environmental focus suggested intellectual sophistication that Maya found appealing, but she also worried about whether her own academic accomplishments would seem impressive to someone with established professional success. The next phase of the search process involved developing comprehensive background information about David's personal circumstances, including potential family relationships, residential stability, and community involvement that might affect his availability and interest in family contact. This investigation required delicate balance between gathering sufficient information for informed decision-making and respecting privacy boundaries that would be important for establishing trust and mutual respect. Public records research revealed that David maintained a stable residential address in Milwaukee's historic Third Ward, indicating financial stability and community integration that suggested emotional readiness for complex personal relationships. Property records showed homeownership that reflected long-term commitment to the Milwaukee area and financial responsibility that aligned with Maya's desire for connection with mature and reliable family members. Social media investigation provided additional insights into David's personal interests, recreational activities, and social connections that offered potential conversation topics and shared experiences for initial contact. His participation in environmental advocacy organizations, cycling clubs, and community volunteer activities suggested values and lifestyle choices that Maya found appealing and compatible with her own interests and goals. Maya's preparation for potential contact with David included developing communication strategies that would provide appropriate context about genetic discoveries while respecting his autonomy and emotional readiness for family revelations. Dr. Martinez recommended initial contact through professional intermediaries who could explain the circumstances and scientific evidence before any direct communication occurred between Maya and David. The preparation process also involved contingency planning for various response scenarios, ranging from enthusiastic interest in family relationship development to polite but firm decline of contact opportunities. Maya worked with Dr. Chen to develop emotional coping strategies for potential rejection or limited interest from David, while maintaining hope for positive outcomes and meaningful family connections. Maya's college preparation activities continued throughout the search process, requiring careful time management and emotional compartmentalization to maintain academic performance while processing complex family relationship discoveries. Her ability to balance college transition stress with family reunification planning demonstrated remarkable resilience and organizational skills that prepared her well for the multitasking demands of university life. The search process also provided opportunities for Maya to deepen her understanding of adoption procedures, family separation policies, and the historical context that had influenced decisions about twin placement during the early 1990s. This research helped her contextualize family choices within broader social and economic frameworks, rather than interpreting them as personal decisions designed to cause harm or separation. Maya's relationship with me continued evolving throughout the search period as she processed genetic revelations and prepared for potential contact with David. Her growing appreciation for the complexity of family relationships and the courage required for reunification attempts strengthened our communication patterns and mutual support for navigating challenging emotional territory together. The practical logistics of contacting David required coordination with adoption reunion specialists who understood legal requirements and ethical protocols for initiating contact between separated family members. These professionals provided guidance on timing, communication methods, and information disclosure that would maximize opportunities for positive initial interactions while protecting everyone's emotional well-being. Maya's decision-making process about the specific approach for contacting David reflected careful consideration of his potential circumstances and emotional readiness for family revelations. She chose to begin with written communication that would provide comprehensive context about genetic discoveries, while allowing David time to process information before deciding whether to pursue direct contact or maintain privacy about family relationships. The letter composition process required multiple drafts and professional consultation to ensure appropriate tone, comprehensive information disclosure, and respectful acknowledgement of David's autonomy in deciding how to respond to family contact attempts. Maya's writing reflected emotional intelligence and communication skills that demonstrated her readiness for adult-level family relationship development. The search and preparation process provided Maya with valuable experience in project management, research methodology, and strategic planning that complemented her academic preparation for university study. Her systematic approach to complex problem-solving and her ability to coordinate multiple professional resources demonstrated capabilities that would serve her well throughout college and professional development. Maya's emotional growth during the search period reflected the kind of personal development that emerges from navigating significant life challenges with appropriate support systems and professional guidance. Her increased confidence in managing complex relationships and her willingness to pursue difficult conversations prepared her for the independence and responsibility that college life would require. The successful completion of the search process established foundations for potential family reunification while maintaining realistic expectations about outcomes and ongoing relationship development. Maya's preparation and professional support created optimal conditions for positive initial contact, while protecting everyone involved from unrealistic expectations or potential emotional harm. The approaching contact with David represented both culmination of months of investigation and preparation and the beginning of a new phase in Maya's understanding of family relationships and personal identity. Her readiness to pursue this contact reflected emotional maturity and commitment to authentic family connections based on mutual respect and shared interest in relationship development. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.